And we are live. Here we are. Welcome to another episode of Coaching Conversation. I'm really delighted today that I am getting to hang out with my friend and colleague, Kanat Gurel. And Kanat, I'm not, you know what? You're going to introduce yourself way better than I will. So I'm just going to pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Todd. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Kanat. I like introducing myself like a son, a dad, a friend, a volunteer, and maybe most of all, an explorer, because I like carrying the curiosity of around myself and trying to find more about who I am and what I want to do even today and forward. So this is the way. I've been practicing coaching for the last 8 years. I am professionally working around that scene at the moment. Had a lot of background around corporate life in leadership roles. And again, being a coach has enlightened my way, and I really enjoy each and every step in the journey.
Fantastic. And thank you for joining me on this one. And Kanat, you are all these things and many more.
Yes, totally.
So
Right.
listen, you know what? I got rid of the banner too quickly. We're here today. Our topic is aligning goals when values and ambition clash, which is a mouthful. So I'm gonna take that away so people can see our names again. But oh man, what do we even mean by that?
Is your camera on, by the way? I can see you.
My camera's on.
Okay.
You can't see me? Oh, that's strange. Oh,
But that's
okay.
all good.
Well, I hope folks at home can see us. I guess we'll find out. Anyway, so aligning goals aligning goals when values and ambition clash. What do we mean? What's here for you when we think about that?
Yeah. Well, I love language, the words. I just love going deeper around the context of what words are representing. And when it comes to aligned goals, I love separating them into aligned and goals.
Ooh.
So aligned is kind of making me think of a mutuality. Like in any relationship, two parties need to be out there for making a joint or mutual understanding. So I'm just putting that in a separate space. And when it comes to goals, that is bringing me the impression of a mission, a task, an objective, which could be short or mid-term, but which could also be going into a wider and longer space, somehow engaging with the vision that we're holding for ourselves. What do you think?
Engaging with the vision that we're holding for ourselves. Like there's something deeply personal about what you said, which is really interesting because sometimes I think we think of goals as very external.
Yeah. Well, when I talk about vision, I just love layering it, which is, to me, vision is so hand in hand with the values and personal values. And there is a deep ground and to be searched for that to me. And values, vision, and mission is somewhat in between, like a step. There is kind of the values are holding the space, and then there's steps of mission which is serving to the long-term vision that we're holding for our lives. This is how I see it. This is how I see the connection in between.
I like that. I like that a lot. What I also like about it is I think you and I have a similar take or a similar tack in that what's the word that I want? A tendency to maybe to dissect the language, right? And what I love is that you started on alignment and goals. And I'll admit that, when I looked at our topic, I immediately went to values and ambition. And I think like what I wanted to add as we sort of define what we're talking about is sort of what do we mean by values in that space? And as coaches, I know that we spend a lot of time, or I do anyway, with my clients at the very beginning of a coaching relationship, really working on a clear understanding of what values are at work in the way that I decide to do the things that I want to do. And particularly when a client shows up and they're experiencing what I like to call an ick, right? Like something's happening at work and it's like, ick, that's not, something feels wrong. Even though I may be achieving my goals, whatever those happen to be, even though I may be doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, something feels like an ick. And usually that involves like, well, let's do a values exploration. Let's see what isn't aligned. Let's see what's being stepped on. And I know that I've experienced that in great detail, and I'm going to talk about some experiences like that depending on how much time we have, but you know what I mean. So I, like, just to bring it down to what's happening here. And I love that you personalized the vision as well, because really it's like what's happening in here becomes so important as we explore this.
Well, it's interesting when you put it like this, because I just kind of remembered what it meant to me when I first talked about values almost like 8 years ago during my first training around coaching. Values? What do you mean values?
Yeah.
Of course I know my values. And the more I talked about it, I didn't really know it well.
Yep.
And still, with the curiosity, when I said about this exploration piece for myself, I see some new context around my values even more extensively. And it also reminds me of a milestone or a turning point in my professional life as well. The more I learned about my values, like respect, like trust in the working space that I was part of, and the dissonance, the disengagement that I was having with the people that I was working with had made me shy away and take a step differently to a different direction, because it was not really meaningful. I see a lot of connection between values, purpose, and meaning. So the more we actually employ and give space to our values, we can put some meaningful understanding to the purposes that we're actually constructing for ourselves. And purpose and goals are kind of very hand in hand to me as well. So exploration of the values, or putting and understanding and learning about who we are, what really makes us proud to be presenting, is kind of like the groundwork. Like DNAs, like the genes that we have, and which may be different from each other anyway. And I love making use of these equalizers, like in a music. They go up and down at times, depending on what we're coming across in our lives. They can shift, adjust in what we need. There are some fundamental things that go all along, and we cannot live without some. And some kind of just wave and fluctuate too, which is great. But having a deep understanding and learning about those values are very meaningful to me.
And yeah, you said something that really resonated with me too, because I know my values, or I think I know my values. And so, sometimes, the values that I live my life by aren't necessarily the values that I think I want you to believe that I'm living my life by. And you know what I mean? Like, there's an essential truth to it. And I think, what I'm hearing as you're describing this is like, in addition to, exploring them and being aware of them, there's also a courageousness that's required. Like, there's a bravery that needs to go into being willing to look at that, to see, sort of what's going on, particularly in a case where there's a misalignment, particularly in a case where something feels strange. Like, if I go back to our topic, right, and we're talking about the misalignment of values and ambition, it the source of ambition can be very external. Like, it could be, my family wants me to achieve X, my company wants me to do Y, or there is a new legislation that requires something that is creating some kind of conflict within me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, speaking from personal experience, that in times when I've done that, or when I've felt that ambition has always been more important. That external ambition has been more important to me, and I would judge myself for not being able to live up to whatever that ambition happens to be.
Mm. Todd, that's a great way of opening up a big hedge. I have attended a great training about exploration of the values,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly we stepped on success. This is what I'm hearing from what you're saying, right? So achievement, accomplishment, and
Yep.
success. What does that even mean? And it was kind of a psychological approach, but
Mm-hmm.
The person who was charged of giving the trainer herself said, "You know what? We are making up all these values in our lives at times artificially.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is not standing as values in nature is something that we're making up as humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we call success? Is it the money that we're making? Is it
Ooh.
the titles that we're holding?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the money, or is it the wealth that we're really growing? What is it? Is it the impact that we're creating? Or is it something else?" So she was just referring to the relationships in the nature. And funny story. Have you ever heard a bear talking to another one saying that, "Did you see how many fish I have caught today?" That is never
Absolutely
the
not.
case, right?
Nope,
But
that doesn't happen.
that there's this benchmarking and comparison that we're including to
Yeah.
our lives and validate ourselves in our state of mind, so that we are valuable. I mean, value is something that we need to own, to me, as much as we're aware and learning more about ourselves. So when we do not honor those values, how can we set the goals or take in the goals in an organization or in a relationship that is so dissonant, and we cannot really move forward because it's not fitting in? It's like a jacket. When it's too tight or when it's too loose,
Yeah.
do we like to go ahead and take a walk outside with that? I doubt. So I think this whole team of exploration of the values individually is giving a lot of space and providing a lot of insights for how we're connecting to each other, whether we're really honoring, whether we're just giving each other the same space as well to respect and understand about each other too.
Can there's so much coming up as you're talking about this. And it would be really easy for me to kind of add more theory, but I have an urge that I kind of want to share a short little story that might be like a real world example, and maybe we could see what happens. Is that okay with you?
Sure, because
All right.
stories is somewhat like just smashing in my face at the moment. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's a short story, but and this is a story from my professional career, and it's one of those stories where I've had an ick, and or perhaps that my background is largely about project delivery. So I was building software, or enabling the building of software, and in that kind of situation, it's usually about delivering the thing, whatever that thing happens to be. And often that's the goal, that's the ambition, right? Delivering it, as fast as possible with, as few resources as possible, etc. Right. And it's one of those situations where people use the word resources with people interchangeably, which drives me nuts. But let's say that that's the context. And I was in one of those situations where the ambition to deliver rapidly was misaligned very, very clearly with my desire to create a high performing team, which I knew had everything to do with making sure that they were respected, that the team actually had what they needed, not just the tools they needed to do the job, but sort of the support and safety within the context of where they were working, and they weren't just being hammered to do the stuff. And eventually there was such a giant misalignment in my own body and in my own life that things cracked at the seams.
Yeah.
And if I'm being honest, actually, Kanat, that happened many times in my life. It's just the very most recent one is when it happened spectacularly. And I think, like, you know, for me, part of that was about, well, like, where was that misalignment, and how did that misalignment come to play, and what was the actual ambition? Because that was definitely an external ambition, but it wasn't my ambition.
What was standing in the way for you to take that ambition for yourself?
That's a really good question. I have an answer to it now. I didn't at the time, but what was standing in the way was fear. What was standing in the way was paralyzing fear that I didn't know what I was talking about, that I wasn't right, that I couldn't trust what I felt in my own heart, in my own body.
Yeah.
Even though I knew I was right.
So what I love about stories is it's just the doors for really reaching out to our values, isn't it? Now that you have the story behind and you're referring to it and telling, in today's mindset, there's a lot to capture anyway, which you were not really aware of, similar to mine. But I think storytelling itself and owning and telling our own stories, which is like a great practice of making a life graph overall over the years, how our life elevated in terms of fulfillment. So it's just giving us the insights or just milestones or steps, how we took our lives to the stage and what mattered and what did not. What was keeping us down, what was lifting us up. I think this is a great place to look at in our own stories, to first acknowledge what is really valuable to us as individuals. And then we can just reach out to others for making alignment in our relationships upon another remarkable value to me, which is inevitable trust. Yes. So how do we build trust in our relationships so that we can run each other or run for each other, right? So I'm a sports guy. I have always been a watcher of sports, and coming from Europe, football is football to me. I hate the word soccer. So in a football team of 11 guys or women, so in the squad, what makes us run for another step until they're totally used and wiped out? It's the, now switching to American football, inch by inch, like Al Pacino is saying, it's just the eyes, it's the connection, it's the trust among each other to make that inch for another level and spending the whole effort and trying to get that for the team itself. So when we get to know each other better with our own values, I think this is making a relationship so strong, so vulnerable, but still moving on. And I think this is really the connection that we may be seeking for having aligned goals forward to avoid any clashes.
Yeah, I love the metaphor of the team because so what the folks listening to this may not know is that Kanat and I share a very specific context, and we've spent some time together in some really intense training, which is great. And as a result of that, I know, Kanat, that you and I have sort of this innate trust that we share with each other. And part of that is because we've spent so much time together that we've had a chance to really explore what's important to you, what's important to me, and what overlaps in those places. And yes, we had this excellent experience where we, did that through a very specific set of activities. And there's an opportunity to do that without that kind of content. Like, that's something that we can create with anyone that we're working with within any context, like the football team, like a team at work, like, a partnership, at home even. Like there's so many ways that my having an understanding, not just an understanding of, but an understanding and a respect for what is valuable to you. And you having the same thing for me creates trust in a way that it isn't created without that.
Yeah. Well, I kind of paused a bit to just to digest the period that we have covered with you, which is kind of very remarkable and emotional too. Yet, I just remember the scenes that we have came across, and that is for sure a great layer in terms of trust. And more than that, Todd, I think the transparency and even employing vulnerability to each other have given us a lot of learning for each other too. Our stories, our backgrounds, our vision, our ambitions ahead of us, and how we can just make an alignment for each other to support each other. So we don't have to be in a particular rigid or solid relationship as named, but we're friends, we're colleagues, and we're supporting each other in many spaces. And this is a relationship. And when we just grow this even bigger in the organizational context at a workplace, in professional life, what would that be looking like? If people were listening to each other, trying to learn, staying curious, not judgmental, and not trying to cast people in some specific personas or profiles, instead trying to support, encourage the unique skills and values that they already have to be presented, to be utilized even further. What would that be looking like for making shots, building goals? Or just look at me, I'm just throwing something ahead. What would that be going through? What would the distance be looking like? And it's just, team is all built of like chains and different styles. You know, just really short, I'm coming from a finance background, and one of the words that I really don't like at all is this support function in operations, in HR or else. Yet lately, this partnership is coming more in place, which was my intention to build up in the teams that I was leading as well. So I was just having a session with a friend yesterday, and in a car or in our bodies, which is the support function? It's a whole team, right? So, and when we look each other, do we see each other as whole in teams? Do we look at the particles or the whole? Just bringing something from our training as well. So if we see it as a whole, what kind of strength, what kind of power would it be providing for us as teams, as organizations?
There's a phrase that comes up. You mentioned support, and there's a phrase that comes up that we hear a lot particularly in corporate organizations. You probably, that phrase that's like, bring your whole self to work. Right. And what I love about it is that it's a beautiful invitation. What I detest about it is no one really ever means it. What they mean is bring your best self to work. What they mean is bring the part of myself, bring my whole self that's not going to make you uncomfortable, whatever that part is, which isn't the whole self. And I think that there's like, sort of a dare to disturb in there. You said the word transparency before. That's one of my values. Because the thing is whatever it is you're bringing, bring it. And then let's see what we can create from whatever that is. And that's beautiful and scary because it's unpredictable.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing too, is you got to be okay with that uncertainty, which is not my favorite thing. You know that, right? Like, it's taken me a long time to be okay with being uncertain.
Yeah, I know that. And when it comes to that, it's the same for me around emotions, for example, Todd. So one of the hardest things that I was having the training was around emotions and trying to be close to our clients from an emotional spectrum. which was tough because it required me to be opening up my emotions as well.
Yeah.
And it's the iceberg, right? So over the surface, we see the outcomes, we see the task, we see the doing stuff, but underneath the surface lies all these past experiences in the emotional space, which we're trying to hide and not show up. And this is also a corporate language when it comes to emotional regulation or intelligence. Without emotional intelligence, how can we go ahead and make use of our emotions in a constructive, productive manner?
Exactly. Because we all have them. It's part of the human condition. We all have them. And whether we like it or not, we schlep them all around with us everywhere we go. Like whether I like it or not, I'm bringing my whole self with me everywhere I go. And how much energy does it take for me to cut part of that off?
Right.
And put it on the shelf until I'm finished with work or something or whatever it is, right? Like how much more could be accomplished with everything rather than just a little bit. And again, I think that it's just scary to imagine that because it's unpredictable, it's messy, kind of like humanity is.
Yeah.
Oh, we could keep going, dude. There's we only got like 4 minutes left, right? So what do you want? Like, what's the takeaway? Because we talked a lot of stuff, like we've been up here and a little bit down here and then back up here. And I can tell that there's sort of something happening that's important, but like, what do you want for folks that are listening to this right now? Like, what's your longing, Kanat?
Well, my longing is really investing and focusing in themselves to be really reaching out and getting connected to their values and really invest in self-awareness, which may really kind of push forward and construct more self-confidence and which can even give more space for showing up their authenticity in place, which is unique. We have different qualities, different values, and different strengths. And this is making us a great puzzle mosaic in our own world. Different colors, different spaces, different shapes, but this is making up a great big life in this beautiful world. So to me, reaching out to that core is going to make an important impact over the relationships that we're building and then making more aligned goals forward to deliver really impactful outcomes. This is what my takeaway would be for them. My longing.
I like that.
Just one more thing,
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So I love this African proverb, or maybe the source is somewhat different. There's not a right or wrong distinction in between, but if you want to go fast, run together, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. This is just embracing all the resources available.
Yes.
And I think making a distinction in between is also giving some insights about our values as well. If you want to really go fast, you can go alone. But just being aware of it matters a lot.
Sustainability, right? And sustainability requires community, and community requires self-knowledge and self-acceptance. And I think that's like, if I had one invitation, it would be, what's the thing that you struggle with, and what are you curious about? And I think start there, and the rest is will start to fall into place, because it's you get to own it all.
And the validation might come first in a space, right? Again, having that ownership for the values and intentions is also taking responsibility for impact, the way that I see it. If I want to run alone, that's fine, so that I'm not really keeping anyone behind or letting anyone alone and letting anyone down too. So just being aware of it is really meaningful, to put a valid purpose ahead.
Yeah, that's another one of my values. It's an important one, man. All right, Kanat, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If folks want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I would love them to be reaching out to me from LinkedIn, like
Mhm.
Kanat Gurel. They can search out. I'll be there. My website is under construction, so the best way would be LinkedIn. Would be happy to
Okay.
get connected and talk more about
Fantastic.
it. I didn't know how time flew by. It was
I know,
lovely.
right? It barely, yeah, it feels like we just started. Kanat, thank you so much. And for everyone else, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate being here. I'm Todd Karges. You can find me at toddkarges.com or here on LinkedIn. It's up to you. I'm easy to get a hold of. And I'm going to turn this off now. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.